Welcome back to the Feast on This cooking show. Today we're going to highlight some great spring ingredients and bring a great cream of asparagus soup to you. Show you some real simple techniques for putting together a great sort of midday meal or even a pick-me-up at the end of the day. We're going to be using some really good aromatics here. We've got our usual suspects, celery, and in place of onion we're going to use a little bit of shallot. Okay, so I want to keep this soup a little bit on the creamier white side, a nice little shade of green from the asparagus. And to do that, we're going to skip using carrots and use this great guy, parsnips. So this is one of my favorite vegetables to use. It has a great carrot sort of rooty taste and texture, but at the same time we get to skip all that orange color. All right. So what we're going to do is prepare these by chopping them up into a nice little small dice and get these ready for the stovetop. We're going to use a nice little stock pot today and get everything kind of heated up and sweating a little bit. And so for that, I've got a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. So we're going to add that to our pan and pop in our parsnip, okay, and a little bit of shallot, and start heating that up. To get this guy, to get these guys nice and savory, we're going to add a couple of fun ingredients. We're going to use a little bit of ginger. And to use this ginger, I like to use a little microplane zester, and we'll just kind of get this guy shredded up. It helps me to cut down on all of the fibers that are in there. All right. And then we're also going to use a little bit of orange zest today. And this is a great tool that allows us to get to just the very top layer of a citrus fruit and take advantage of that great zest with all those amazing essential oils in there. So when we run this over there, we get just the top layer. And that's a good complement to our ginger. So we're using some good complementary flavors here. Get these ready. Pop these into a pan. And we want to stir these up really nicely. And as the parsnips begin to soften up a bit, we're able to add our celery. We've got a nice fine dice of celery in here as well. And I like to return this to the fire, and I find it's very helpful to sprinkle in a little bit of salt. It helps to release the juices of the vegetable, get those natural juices going. So the main star of the show here is asparagus, and we're going to take some of this great spring asparagus, it's popping up all over Michigan right now, and use it in two different ways. The first thing you have to do when you get this home, though, is find out where the really tough woody stuff is in the stem. And asparagus is a great vegetable because it tells us that by itself. If you give the asparagus a nice little bend, it breaks right at the spot where we've got a really tough woody part of the stem and then the nice tender greens of the asparagus. I want to save these beautiful tips though for later on in the soup and cut up our stalks nice and small. These are going to go into our soup and really become the base of the flavor of the soup. So we've got the tips and the stems all separated. Now to make our actual body of the soup, we need a little bit of chicken stock or vegetable stock. In our case, we're using some vegetable stock today. Going back to that orange, not only are we using the zest, but we're going to pull a little bit of the juice out as well. And then at the end, we're going to finish it off with a little bit of heavy cream. It's going to help us to make it really nice and velvety, give us a good supple flavor and something that I'll eat really well. Now, once all of our vegetables have begun to soften up, this is when we can do the addition of our chicken stock, orange juice, and even our heavy cream. Once we have all the liquids in there, we can return to the stovetop and let this simmer for quite a while. You may notice on the inside of the pot here, this is going to be a rather thin soup because we're using quite a bit of liquids to the ratio of the solid vegetables that are in there. So when we do throw this into the blender, we're probably going to get just enough to kind of coat the back of the spoon. So it won't be a very heavily pureed soup. But we've got the ginger and the shallots, all the celery and parsnips, those aromatic vegetables in there, and those are going to provide a lot of great base flavor for us. Okay, once the soup has had a chance to simmer a little bit on the stove top and get nice and soft or soften up the vegetables, what we can do is bring it over to our blender. Shut our fire off here. And as you can see, we've got sort of a nice creamy color. The orange zest is bleeding a little bit of the orange, and we've also got this beautiful green pieces of celery and of asparagus. We want to make sure that we don't cook this too long. We want to just soften up the vegetables. We could be in danger of taking those asparagus from beautiful and green to army green, kind of drab. So I'm going to carefully pour this into a blender. Scrape out any of the solids that we have here. Get the top onto the blender. We want to make sure that we open up a little corner here so that we let out any steam. One of the tricks to blending up hot liquids is that it can often cause an explosion as that pressure builds up in there. So we've got our pressure sort of released and the steam is able to come out of the blender. Start it. After we're done blending up the soup, we're actually able to pour it back into the pan. And you can see it is pretty thin. And what we're going to do is bring this back to the stovetop and allow it to cook for an additional few minutes with the addition of our asparagus tops. And by saving these to the end, we're able to make sure that they don't get overcooked, and most importantly, that they don't get lost in the puree. It's nice to have a really nice little asparagus top in the soup. Once there's been enough time for the soup to heat up again and the asparagus tips to actually cook and soften slightly, we're ready for some final seasoning with salt and pepper, and possibly, if you like to spice things up a little bit, you can put a little cayenne in there as well. What I would suggest is that you have a nice shallow bowl to serve this in, and we'll take a nice ladle full of that, pour it out into our soup bowl, and as a garnish at the end, what I like to do is give it a little flourish of just some extra virgin olive oil, just a drizzle on the top. And we're going to finish with just a sprig of mint that we'll chop up. And so we've got some fresh mint here. It's a good complementary flavor to the ginger and the orange. And we will take that leaf off the stem, give it a nice thin mince here, and sprinkle that on top. And that is our fresh asparagus spring soup. Thanks for joining us here at Feast on this blog, and we'll be back next month with another great recipe.
At Feast Gourmet Kitchen Shop, our aim is to bring the joy of cooking to you. And so we do that through classes and through great advice here right in the shop. We really drive home technique and good ingredients and try to pair that with the best tools possible. We teach a full range of classes here, from basic knife skills to Chicken 101, all the way up to ethnic classes like classic Thai or Vietnamese. And they're from the beginner all the way up to the enthusiast. Our goal here at Feast is to give you confidence so that you can tackle any recipe you want.